Wish everybody would come to order. We'll open the meeting with the roll call from our secretary. Please. Here.
Mike Pratt.
Here.
Gene Volpe.
Here.
Tom Kessler.
Here.
Bruce Forster.
Here. Thank you. We were given the minutes of last Thursday's meeting, which for those of you who weren't present, which I think was everybody, of the Kreider meeting. Does anybody have any questions on that, or like to approve that minutes of the Thursday meeting?
I move we approve the minutes.
Bruce moves, our second. Second by Mike. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. We will now move ahead then with the continuation of the Main Street petition, and Judge Slavin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know there's at least one new face in the audience. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Slavin. I'm a retired judge engaged as an independent contractor to what is called facilitate this hearing. I have no adjudicatory responsibilities. I am not for or against any particular position. I am a neutral. I am here, hopefully, however, to add some organization, efficiency, and flow to the proceedings. This is indeed Green River Wind Farm Phase 1 LLC's application for 46 special use permits as part of a wind energy conversion system. As shown by certificate of publication, notice that this hearing was originally published in the Dixon Telegraph on June 18, 2012, and notices continue as the hearing continues. Notices to adjoining property owners have also been provided. All who so desire will absolutely be given an opportunity to be heard, but for everyone's benefit, we want to do it as efficiently and orderly as possible. There are many reasons for anyone's appearance at this hearing. You could be, 1, a member of the public as a citizen and spectator, 2, part of the applicant's contingent, or 3, an interested party. In this context, an interested party does not necessarily mean someone who is absolutely for or against the requested special uses, but someone who wants to be heard. If you do want to be heard, you will fall into any one or more of 3 categories. Number 1, you want to be able to cross-examine witnesses. But please, that is just to ask questions of a particular witness, not to argue with him or her. Everyone so wishing to cross-examine will be given one opportunity to cross-examine each and every witness. Number 2, you want to give testimony. This means that you desire, under oath, to testify to facts relevant to the board's eventual decision. Such is not the time to describe your feelings or announce your opinion, but to aver facts, and you are subject to cross-examination. Everyone so wishing to testify will be given one opportunity to do so. Or number 3, you want to make a closing statement. This is your opportunity to tell the board how you feel or give them your opinion based on the facts adduced during the whole hearing process as to what their decision should be. Everyone so wishing to give a closing statement will be given one opportunity to do so. Again, everyone will absolutely have a chance to be heard. However, in order to try to add some semblance of organization, there have been and are 3 half sheets available to sign up to participate. One indicating your wish to testify, another your wish to cross-examine witnesses, and the last indicating your desire to give a closing statement. These were and continue to be available from Alice Hinkle. While signing up is not a prerequisite to testifying, cross-examining, or making a closing statement, I will initially be calling on folks using those sign-up sheets. Only after exhausting that list will I invite others to testify, to cross-examine, or to give a closing statement. Please note that once you've signed up, you will not have to sign up again at each continued session. I will keep those half sheets current throughout the process. Written communications sent in advance of this hearing or any written material intended as something for the board to consider is subject to board rule Article 5, Section 12, that 8 copies be provided. Any communications received that did not comply with this requirement may not be considered by the board. Those communications which do conform are now marked as Exhibits 1 through 83, and each board member has a copy and another copy made a part of the record in this matter. As to the chronological progress of the hearing, the applicant had an opportunity to make opening remarks and then presented evidence, one witness or document at a time. After each of the applicant's witnesses, the commission first, the commission and interested parties had the opportunity to cross-examine those witnesses. Please, folks, turn your cell phones off or on silent. Interested parties then have the opportunity to present evidence, one witness or document at a time. That is the stage at which we're presently proceeding. I will place each witness under oath. After each interested party witness, the commission and then the applicant will have the opportunity to cross-examine those witnesses, including other interested parties. Following the interested parties' production of evidence, rebuttal witnesses or documents may be presented by the applicant one at a time, followed by cross-examination by the commission or interested parties. Following the applicant's rebuttals, surrebuttal witnesses may be produced by the interested parties one at a time, and the commission and the applicant have the opportunity to cross-examine those surrebuttal witnesses. Finally, the last stage of the proceeding is that the applicant and interested parties are given opportunities for closing remarks. Some sub-rules. As you may have heard, each session has a time limit under the zoning board's rules of 2.5 hours. However, we certainly don't want to cut off anybody right in the middle of something, so I'll certainly make a reasonable effort to let someone finish a particular stage when the time limit has been reached. Excuse me. Or, if there is very little time remaining at the end of a stage, I may simply suggest to the chair to continue the session rather than starting on another stage. I do have the discretion to call for short recesses. Under the zoning board's rules, I have the duty to rule on the admissibility of evidence. While the strict judicial rules of evidence do not apply herein, I will exercise some equitable control of what is being presented with or without an objection. We do have a court reporter here this evening taking down what is said during the proceedings. I ask all to be mindful of her job. She cannot take down two people talking at once, nodding heads or gestures. And while I know how skilled she is, there is a limit to how fast anyone can talk and expect her to keep up. I do please ask for civility and decorum. This is certainly a public forum, but please be respectful of all who consider it important enough to be here. I ask to refrain from displays of approval or disapproval. And, as now with all public gatherings, I ask you to turn your cell phones off or at least to put them on silent. As I indicated, we are at the stage of the interested parties presenting witnesses. More particularly, we're in the midst of the folks who have signed up, indicating their desire to testify. I give the same admonishment that I did last time. Please, just so we all don't get crosswise with each other, understand that this is the time for testimony. Testimony means that you'll be under oath and you're testifying to facts. If any of your sentences begin with "I think," or "I recommend," or "I believe," I'll probably stop you, hopefully politely, but ask you to move on. The time to announce your feelings, your beliefs, what you think the board will do, comes when you make closing arguments and your argument is based on the evidence produced. All right. Moving forward then. From the half sheets, those wishing to testify, I finally discerned this gentleman's name. His name is Jason Ward. Pat Scully. Ann Donnelly. Ed Donnelly. Lisa Michael, I think it is. Mark Bresson. Margina Schwartzbach. How'd I do? Okay. Now step on up. I'm giving people the choice. You can either use the podium or sit at the table. Your choice.
I'll sit at the table.
Okay. Want to raise your right hand, please? You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
First thing we're going to do is ask you to state your name.
Margina Schwartzbach.
And for my court reporter, would you please spell both of those?
Schwartzbach is SCHWARTZBACH.
Thank you. Your address, Regina?
473 State Route 251, West Brooklyn, Illinois.
And what county is that?
Pardon?
What county is that?
Lee.
Okay. Why don't you take it from there and remember to stick to facts. Now, not to announce how you feel. And tell the board which one.
Okay. I have a wind turbine to the west of our property, adjacent to our property. It's 1,400 feet from our foundation of our home. It is very annoying. It produces loud humming sounds. It's not always consistent. Sometimes it's pulsating. It keeps us up at night, my husband and I. We experience ringing in the ears, and we contributed to the wind turbine because we didn't experience it before. Some nights he's up and I'm not up, but it's just because you get so tired because every single night that's all you hear is constant noise. We turn on the TV to drown it out, and hopefully you'll fall asleep. In the summer when the windows are open, it's just totally unbearable. You don't hear crickets at night anymore. You don't hear birds sing in the morning. Your life is just totally disrupted. You cannot be outside and garden in your yard or do anything without this noise humming or pulsating or whatever it does. Sometimes it goes swish, swish. My husband and I both enjoy being in our yard. It is annoying. I have called to make complaints to the zoning administrator, Mr. Chris Hinkle. I have gotten nowhere. I am fed up with it. And I wish I could do something about it, like these people can.
Just tell me whenever you're finished. I just can't.
Okay. In June 12th, our wind turbine started operating the first week of June. June 12th, June 15th, I'm sorry. I called to report it to Mr. Hinkle about it making loud noises and what was the complaint. And he said he would call the company and contact somebody, and they would get back to me. A week went by. I heard no response. My daughter then called and made the complaint and asked to have the permits and stuff, and he immediately said everything was done by permit, don't worry about it. Did check, nothing. So at the end of, he also gave her the number of the on-site plant manager of our wind turbine company, and we contacted him, and he said, well, with the July 4th holiday coming up, he would get back to us. July 4th came and went, nothing happened. October came, and we still hadn't heard nothing from him, so I wrote a formal letter to the wind company, and within a few days, I received a response from their on-site plant manager. We agreed to have a meeting 5 days later. We set up a meeting with him. He just basically asked us what our complaints were. We told him. He said he'd get back to the company. Nobody ever got back to us. So I again then called Mr. Hinkle to make a complaint. I asked him what the complaint procedures were. He said that I report to him and we report to him and he reports to the company. In the meantime, I asked him what notice I was supposed to have gotten of this wind turbine, since I'm an adjacent landowner, and he said a letter. And I said, well, I never received a letter. And I would assume that would be certified because somebody would have to have proof of service. So last week I called and asked him for the building permit for the wind company and the letter that I received service or notice, and he couldn't find any of it. It's not there. And this is where I'm at. And I have called twice since to have my phone call not even answered. I've called today at like 2 o'clock, I get the voice message. I leave a message. Nobody called me back. And I hope that you guys don't have to
We're not going to
experience.
give away.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's hard to do.
That's my story.
Okay. Question of this witness. Gentlemen of the board, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. What was the windmill company that you're dealing with then?
That was Goldwind.
And you live at Route 251, and what's the crossroad roughly where you're at?
I'm just south of Tower Road at 251.
And you said the windmill is there just one windmill or is there more?
It's just one, and it's right west of our, like west and just south a few hundred feet. And maybe because my bedroom is to the north, it doesn't matter. It just is totally unbearable.
And how long have you lived at your house there?
12 years.
Okay.
At one point, my husband was sleeping with earplugs in his ears, and I told him, what is he going to do when our house burns down and we lose a child or something in a fire?
And this started operating in June, the windmill started operating in June of this year?
June 1st.
Of 12, okay. Is there anything besides noise that's bothering you? Is there any vibration or anything like that you feel or anything else? Or?
The shadow flicker bothers you.
Shadow flicker.
It depends on this time of day that I experience it. I notice it more in the fall when I'm in the kitchen cooking and the sun is going down and I have to shut the blinds because it's irritating. I do notice it when I'm outside. I haven't been outside since like August, so that is kind of laid back in my mind somewhat, but it is annoying.
So they haven't done anything to try and fix the problem as far as...
No, they asked me what my solution was, what I thought should be a solution to the problem of the wind turbine. And I said, well, you know, it's already there. I'm sure it's not going anywhere. So I made a proposal that it operated at certain times of the day, that it didn't affect my personal enjoyment of my property and I was at work. But then I could still get a decent night's sleep and not be bothered by it.
Is there any times or wind directions where it doesn't bother as much as others, or does that affect it?
No. I think because the wind is generally out of the west and I'm to the west of it, we are bothered by it nightly.
Okay, that's about all I have.
Mr. Forster?
No question.
Mr. Pratt?
No question.
Mr. Bolte?
No question.
Mr. Bass?
I can't think of any right now. I think I have most of mine.
Okay. All right, questions of this witness from interested parties? Porter's not here. Ms. Millman's not here. Pat Scully? Robin Ackerson? Giles Cowledge?
Yes, sir. I'm Ms. Schwarzbach, I'm sorry. When you had questions of county officials regarding your situation, did you ever get a response?
No.
My last question is, have you ever filed a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act response to the county or any of its?
I am looking into that right now because when I called today and left a message, I told them that these are, first off, Mr. Hinkle told me when I called that they couldn't find the documents that the lawyer had. And I said, what lawyer? Because those are public documents. I don't think they're supposed to leave the zoning
Well, what you
department. Or,
Just let's stick with that.
right, sorry. Anyway, those are public documents. If the lawyer wanted them, they should have copies of them. So I should be able to obtain my permit and anything that's related to that when I requested it. And I was told they were at the lawyers. I asked what lawyers. I didn't really get an answer to the lawyers. So I made a call to the county lawyer, and they said, well, they wouldn't have it, that those would be at the zoning board office. So I made a call back to the zoning board office, and they said that they weren't there, and that they weren't withholding them from me. So this was Friday. I've called today. Nobody answered my call. I left a message on the answering machine saying my name again and what I was requesting, and that it was a violation of the Freedom of Information Act to not retain those.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rich Forrest. Marie Summer. Steve Robry.
Hi, Ms. Schwarzbach. Do you happen to know how tall the turbine is that's plugged in the company?
I don't.
And do you happen to know the megawatt rating?
I don't.
Do you know if it's over 1 megawatt?
I'm sorry.
That's fine. Okay.
Thank you. Bob Logan. Elizabeth Hartman.
No questions.
Catherine Baker.
No questions.
Ed Gertis. Kendall Baker.
No questions.
Dean Gelden. Nancy Timble.
No questions.
Jim Timble.
No questions.
Greg Gonigan.
No questions.
Marshall Thompson. Mark Wagner.
Yes.
Hi, Margina.
Hi.
Are you a landowner who could have hosted turbines, or
No,
no?
I'm just a landowner adjacent to the property.
Okay. And before that turbine was constructed, did you know that that was going to be constructed there?
No. I had no notice, no letter, nothing.
You had no idea.
No.
And when you saw that it was being constructed, at that point, were you, let's say, trusting that
No.
everything was going to be okay?
No, I wasn't trusting. I was upset. I didn't know what I could even do about it because I wasn't notified. I had no idea. I was upset about it. Like I said, I had no idea what I could even do because I wasn't notified. I came home one day and they were putting in new driveways in the ditches up from or down from our house so that they could get, putting in a road back for it to go. And then the landowner did tell my husband, after the construction had started, he said, geez, I'm really sorry, that wasn't supposed to go there. It was supposed to go back down the fence row, back in the far corner. Too late.
Okay. Were you aware of the fact, you mentioned that Goldwyn was the developer.
Mm-hmm.
Were you aware of the fact that prior to Goldwyn becoming the developer, that actually Mainstream was the company that was?
No, I was not aware of that.
Okay. And when you started to hear the noise, shadow flicker, whatever, were you surprised that that was happening, or did you expect that to happen?
I think I was kind of surprised. I think I was taken back at how loud it actually was.
Okay, and did you feel as a resident of Lee County that your zoning, and I'm not referring to Mr. Henkel, I mean zoning laws in general, that they would have protected you from that happening?
Had there maybe been some, there are none. I mean, now the research that I've been doing, there's an ordinance, a proposed ordinance of protecting landowners for future sales of their homes or whatever. I have no protection. That doesn't, there was nothing in place to protect myself or the others around me. As far as I know, there's nothing.
Okay. So has your ability to enjoy your property lessened since that turbine went up?
Greatly. We have a swimming pool in our yard, and you don't even want to lay out in the yard and be in the pool because it's not enjoyable. You do not go outside. The minute you walk out that door, it's a constant noise, constant. It doesn't go away. And I will say this, a lot of the turbines in our area don't run all the time, and I can't figure it out. But since I've complained about ours, it hasn't shut off.
Okay, last question. Many persons like you have agreed to settle this with a cash payment from the wind developer and be quiet about it. Would that take care of your problem?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thomas Steffen. David Ackerson. Jason Ward. Karen Kenny. Julie Vinlar. Brian Vinlar. Tony Sabino. Kim Shirk. Other interested parties whose names I've not called by the use of these hash sheets. All right. Mr. Lee, on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Schwartzbach, do you know anything about the project that's being proposed here in terms of where it is, or
No, I just know it's wind turbines and they're annoying.
do you know how close you would be to it?
No, I'm not concerned how close I am to that project.
And you mentioned that the turbine near you went online in June of this year. When did you first notice its construction?
In October, I believe, of 11.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, you may sit down. Thank you. Catherine Baker. Want to raise your right hand, please? Solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the swear or affirm. The truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Okay, let's just start, Ms. Baker, with your name.
My name is Catherine Geither.
And your address.
My address is 17935 2900 North Avenue, Walnut, Illinois.
Is that Lee County?
That is in Bureau County.
Bureau County. Okay. Why don't you take it from there and tell us something word facts you want to tell them?
Okay, can I just set this up
Absolutely.
just a second? My name is Catherine Geither. I live in Bureau County, 1 mile from the Lee County line, south of Game Road. I farm in Bureau and Lee counties. The 3 closest proposed windmills are about 1 1/4 to 1 3/4 mile from my house and 1 mile east of a family farm home in Lee County, the residence of where my mother-in-law lives. I am here today to share with the Lee County Zoning Board facts of how the health, safety, and welfare of my life has changed since my county allowed a wind farm project to build turbines this close. We have windmills 1,400 feet, 1,700 feet, and 2,200 feet from our house, and we are in the middle of that triangle. The noise produced by the wind turbines has drastically changed my life. The swishing of the blades are one noise level, but depending on the direction of the wind and the direction the generators are, whether they're facing us or away from us, they can be so loud they sound like a jet engine taking off. They're often so loud that it is no longer enjoyable to be out in my house yard gardening or take care of our apple orchard. I've taken decibel readings various times, and on calm days, readings have been between 54 and 70 decibels. Some nights I've even measured them at 77 decibels. In the months of fall when the crops have been picked, in the 2 months of fall when crops have been picked, and the 3 winter months when the ground is frozen, and the 3 months of spring when crops are not tall enough yet to absorb some of the sound, we are bombarded with 8 months of extra annoying roaring noise. We can still hear the oppressive noise in summer because the windmills are in direct line of our sight, which puts us in direct line of hearing, regardless of whether there are crops to absorb some of the noise or not. The windmills to the east are a mile or more away, and they don't have as dramatic effect, but we don't know exactly what effect there is because they are so overshadowed by the ones that are closer. We expect to hear some noise from the proposed Lee County turbines. We do not, because we know now that when we drive 2 miles away from the turbine across from our property, we can still hear that noise 2 miles away. Depending on where I am in my house yard and what structure or tree the noise is bouncing off of, the noise has been loud enough to chase me inside. Inside my home, I hear turbine noise in the living room, but it is most prevalent at night in my bedroom. The generators run continually, and because we are on the end of the line, they tell us they cannot shut them off because they need to have a little bit of electricity going through those lines to prevent corrosion. So these generators run continually and can be heard over the swishing of the blades. It is a known fact that when a person does not have one of their senses functioning, that the other senses become more acute. At night, when I close my eyes, no longer using that sense, and try to drift off to sleep, my ears are even more sensitive to the noise the windmills make. I used to be able to open my windows and enjoy the beautiful free breeze from the cross ventilation of having 3 windows on each side of my bedroom. Since the windmills are too loud to be able to fall asleep if the windows are open, I have to run a window air conditioner. It too produces some noise, but not as much as the turbines, and it is also a constant noise and does not have that intermittent swishing or the turning off of the turbine and turning on of the turbine as they slow the blades or turn it off for short periods of time. I do not enjoy air conditioning because I get headaches when cold air is blowing over me. I must now sleep with a goose down quilt over my body and head whenever the air conditioner is running. On nights that summer heat does not require an air conditioning running, I often find myself waking up at odd times, such as 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock or 4 a.m., or whenever the windmills are turned on and back off again. I am raised on a farm as a farm girl, and my parents instilled in me to listen for noise changes in machinery and for the difference in pitches of an animal's bellow or grunt to tell if they were in trouble or needed attention. I therefore am very sensitive to the variances in noise levels. On the days the windmills run, I have ringing in my ears, even when I'm inside my house. I did not have this ringing in my ears before the windmills were built, and it disappears when I go places there aren't windmills. They're not ringing right now. As far as shadow flicker, the windmills beside us, the permit says they are 407 feet tall. Shadow flicker not only comes into the windows, but it bounces off the interior walls and exterior buildings. Last February 4th, I thought my computer screen was going out. And so, in a little more investigation, I realized when I turned around that the shadow flicker was coming in a south and two west windows, bouncing off a north and east wall in my living room and the ceiling. And that was bouncing, reflecting back down into my computer screen, which gave it that look of you're thinking it's going bad. So I decided I couldn't work there anymore, and I thought, well, I'll just go out to the kitchen and wash dishes. Went out to my kitchen. I have north windows in the kitchen. The shadow flicker was bouncing off the barn wall back into my north kitchen windows and bouncing all around my kitchen. So I went to my dining room. Well, I knew I couldn't be there. It had south windows. I went upstairs. The two front bedrooms, south windows. So I thought I'd go to my sewing room. No, it has the north window, and that same barn was reflecting the shadow flicker back in, so that you couldn't really concentrate on what you were trying to sew because of all the reflection in your peripheral vision. I finally determined there was one room in my entire house I could be in, my laundry room. It's because it does have a north window, but there is a closet that I can shut the door and get rid of that window. This room is 10 feet wide by about 18 to 20 feet long. Has a big freezer, a washer and dryer, and a folding table. So I would get to have a chair in there and sit in a chair, and that is where I could stay and get away from shadow flicker. When I talked to John Martin, he said, well, they could build a berm that was tall enough to keep the shadow flicker from coming in your windows. My concern is it will take a lot of care to start a berm of trees. We already have some trees, large trees, so and they don't keep the shadow flicker out. They really do not help to deter the noise. And my concern is who will pay for the expense of trimming those trees, getting them started with a nutrient fertilizer, and all of the things that go along with trying to do that. And when all would be said and done, I would be living in a forest, which I know doesn't work because my neighbors live in a forest, and the noise bounces off the trees, and they have it even louder than we do. And the same way with the shadow flicker. It bounces off each individual little trees and comes in at a more dispersed rate than it does with us. And worst of all, I would lose a beautiful view that I have to the northwest, and I do have some videos that I'll be showing, and in those videos I'll show you some facts that blinds and shades and double-thick drapes do not really even keep shadow flicker out. The only thing I've found that will keep the shadow flicker out is to use a double-sided, silver-sided bubble wrap insulation and cut it to fit into my windows. But if I do that to all 33 affected windows, I only have 5 windows left in my house to let any light in. And should I have to live in a cave? When I'm farming with my husband, and we're out, especially in one field we're surrounded by 5 windmills. I don't have motion sickness. I've never been dizzy. I've loved rides. I can take that type of thing. But when I go into that field, either to mow or rake, and I'm trying to look down at the ground, I still have shadow flicker, or not shadow flicker, but the rotation, movement of those blades in my peripheral vision. Now, if they all went the same way at the same rate of speed, I might be okay, but they're not. They're all going at different rates, and I'm trying to concentrate on moving equipment, and I've got movement up here, and I actually kind of get a disoriented feeling until I get about halfway in the field and I'm in far enough that by looking straight down I no longer get those windmills in my peripheral vision. I will also show you some videos on TV interference. And I guess my last concern is the last meeting we were at, the fact was mentioned about ice throw, which I was not even aware of. And last year was such a beautiful winter, we didn't have ice. But I'm a little concerned about going to my mailbox when there's icy conditions, because it is less than 1,400 feet from the windmill that is up about 20 feet on the hill. So I'm a little concerned about that. So the facts that I'm trying to show you tonight is that my zoning board did not do a good job of looking out for the health, safety, and welfare of the constituents in their county.
You guys need to move from it.
This first video is a daytime decibel reading. The second video is a nighttime video. The reason you see the numbers jumping around like that, that's kind of when the blades actually coming down and do their swishing, and then you'll see that it goes up a little bit and that type of thing. Okay, I have some pictures of shadow flip here in parts of my home.
This is Friday, November 23. This is my back porch. At 3:39 in the afternoon, under the shadow flicker, coming in my back porch windows.
Okay, once the shadow flicker comes in, it bounces off the walls and the ceiling. And this next one is showing you that it's bouncing off of a little tray that I keep parts, paper clips and that type of thing in. But it bounces back in your face if you're sitting there.
So we've been told that drapes will stop shadow flicker. So I pulled my drapes, and this is what I am still getting in my house. This is Wednesday, November 21st, 2012.
And this next one is a little bit closer view of that.
Give you an example of how this shadow flicker reflects off of everything you have in your house. This is a little whatnot gatherer for trays and things like that to put my office equipment in, and you can just see that it's continually just reflecting off of that. There's no place you can put your eye in this room but what this is happening on the walls, on the ceiling, on all the other furniture, on the television set, on the computer screen. It just makes it very unbearable. And this is 3:30 on Wednesday, November 11th, or I'm sorry, November 21st, 2012. November 21st, 2012.
Okay, this one is computer screen. This is facing south. No window gets anything from this. This is simply the reflection off of a north wall and a ceiling that is doing this.
This is the shadow flicker as I'm trying to be at my computer. And this is what you see.
And what you get is that's your peripheral vision that you're getting all of that flicker in. If you look beside the curtain to the right, you will see a little triangle white area. That is the shade from the window. The reflection is coming in. The shade is pulled. This shadow flicker goes right on through that shade. So shades do not work as a way of stopping shadow flicker. So let's move outdoor with the shadow flicker, because we also live outdoor. Being farmers, this is part of our living area and our work area. It's not like we can go to an 8 to 5 job someplace and get away from shadow flicker.
This is shadow flicker on the side of my house.
As that shadow flicker comes across, you can see it comes across the upstairs and downstairs windows. And this is the west side of the house. This windmill is on the southwest of us, 1,700 feet away. Again, one more view kind of from the southwest corner of the house that it is not only coming in the west windows, but it's coming in the south windows. Okay, this is FAA lights that we're seeing at night. That is out my porch door. You'll notice that they didn't all turn on and off at the same time. That's because the propeller blades were going in between the light and my house. So then I get actually kind of three breaks of that light and appearing and breaking and appearing instead of just one blinking on and blinking off. On this, you can kind of see where it is actually lays across the blade as the blade goes across. So we get a little bit more red light than people further away from a wind farm. And then when you have fog, it sometimes even makes the light look more obtrusive. Because now it goes up in the air. And I believe that night the windmills were not running, so this was the on and off light of the FAA light. Which you get kind of a fire effect, triangle effect. A very short couple of pictures here. Okay, this is actually the windmill as seen through my dining room window, and you can see a little distortion, and that's old house glass, sometimes does a little bit of distortion, or if you have storm windows on, you'll see a kind of a distortion to the windmills. They won't look as true as they do when you're outside. But this is the reflection of the windmill that came in that dining room window from the east. This was in the morning, bouncing off my south dining room door and reflecting back onto a DTN computer screen that my husband has. So now you not only get one windmill, but you get a double, like you're seeing double. And it makes it very hard to see and read the computer screen. And this first one is just showing you that one night the turbines were turned off, but the sun is directly behind, and you can see with this that if this turbine was moving, that the blades would be in direct line with the sun, and this is where we get that shadow flicker. As the year progresses on, it starts someplace around the 13th or 14th of November, and I know it goes through the 4th of February for sure, and sometimes goes a little bit beyond that, kind of depending on the weather, whether you have cloudy days or sunny days. These next videos are showing you what happened to our TV interference. We used to get all of these stations, and I believe this is 6 different stations that we used to get. And this is what has happened when the turbines are running from that direction. Some of them are to the east, and they'll affect the ones, the TV stations we used to get from the east. Sometimes when the ones from the west and north-southwest are running, that will interfere with the Quad City stations that we get. So just to give you an idea of what an annoyance this is, and we do not have cable, and we never ever intended to get cable. We didn't figure it was something we needed. We could get our news, we could get our weather, and a little bit of entertainment from antenna TV. This was a cake program. You can see at times you can't even hear what they're saying. And if you're not into that kind of a program, maybe you like woodworking. And if you don't like to do that, maybe you would like to watch the Antique Roadshow. It's still running. But you have no idea what they're doing. That was on a particularly bad day. And if you can't get something from the west on the same day, well, let's try something from the east. Oh, that's right. Both windmills were running that day. and maybe you would like to end your day with some music. Okay, my conclusion is you have seen that the health, safety, and welfare of my husband and I and some of our neighbors were not looked out for with our zoning board. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Ms. Kaiser? Chairman?
The turbines in your neighborhood, when were those installed and were they running?
They went online 2 years ago in, I believe it was the fall.
And most of your shadow flicker you were showing was November to February. Is that how many turbines?
That was what I was showing, and that is one turbine that does that. We get it in the spring from the other direction, but I didn't take any videos last spring.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Bulkey?
I have no question.
Mr. Forster?
No question.
Mr. Bassler?
How do you think this has affected your health?
Well, the ringing in my ears is not pleasant, and it puts some extra stress on us. There are some days when the windmills are not running that I walk out the door and I know the first thing I say, and my husband can attest to that, is, "Oh, it's awesome today." And then I realize, oh, that's because there's no noise, there's no windmills. And so it definitely makes a big difference in our happiness. I mean, you have to go beyond that and find some inward happiness, or you'll have health problems. And I'm trying to avoid that by finding anything I can do to be happy and not let this get us down.
Have you been in conversation with the Big Sky people?
We have, and we have not heard back from them since very, very early last January or February. Can't remember which month.
What does Bureau County say about this?
I cannot answer that because at the time that hearing and all of that was going forth, I was teaching during the work week in St. Charles, Illinois.
That's all the questions I have.
Forgot what about Mr. Grant? I kept trying to jump around so I didn't get in order. Is that complete with the done work? All right. Interested parties with half sheets. Mr. Porter's not here, and Ms. Nolan's not here. Pat Scully, Robin Ackerson, Mr. Cavalich.
Good evening, Catherine. How are you?
Just fine.
Do you remember the videos that you showed inside the house?
Mm-hmm.
The very last video inside the house. Can you tell me if those were blinds or room darkening shades that were covering the window?
Those are a cloth type blind that is a double blind and has, they're also what they call insulating type blinds.
Is it insulated against, is it designed, what's it
It's
insulated?
supposed to insulate against cold.
Okay. How long is your shadow flicker?
In the beginning of the fall, It started around 3:20 and went to about 3:40. Since then, as the sun goes down earlier and earlier, it starts earlier, and as it goes down further south, it lasts longer. And again, I didn't keep stats on it last year. I'm starting to keep those things this year, but I cannot tell you. But I do know at its most severe, it was around an hour.
That would be for one day?
One day.
Do you have a projection for how much shadow flicker you might experience in a year?
Again, I could project, but it's not going to be a fact. It's just going to be a guess.
Okay. I think that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Mr. Boris, Marie DeSummer, Stephen Rotary.
During one of your videos, I believe you said that this is a video showing shadow flicker outside of the house. Did you mention that that was from a turbine that was 1,750 feet away?
1,700 feet.
1,700 feet away. And do you know how tall the turbine is?
They are 407 feet according to the Bureau County permit. When I talked to the Big Sky people, they said they tell the aerial sprayer they're just under 400 feet.
Okay. So, 1,700 feet. 1,600 feet would be about 4 times the height of the turbine. So even though the turbine is located more than 3.5 times the height of the turbine from your home, would you say that the shadow flicker is impacting the quality of your life?
Oh, definitely, it impacts the quality of our life.
And even though the turbine is located more than 3.5 times the height of the turbine from your house, would you say the noise is adversely impacting the quality of life?
The noise definitely is impacting. The one that's the noisiest, though, is 1,400 feet from our house, straight south of us.
And you showed the videos of the TV reception. Did you experience any of this prior to the turbines becoming
No, we did
operational?
not.
And then at the beginning, towards the beginning of your testimony, you mentioned that you had sleep problems, both you and your husband. Did you have any sleep problems prior to the turbines becoming operational?
No, I'm one of those people that if there's a horizontal position, I'm out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Logan, Elizabeth Hartman,
No questions?
Ed Curtis. You got her under oath now, Mr. Geiger. It's your chance.
No questions.
Ian Geldin, Nancy Timball, Jim Timball.
Yes.
Hi, Catherine. Were you and Kendall solicited by Big Sky to become participating landowners?
No, we were not aware it was happening.
Your neighbors who have turbines, did you have a conversation with them or the person, as Martina B. did? Did you receive a statement from them that they didn't realize the turbine was going to be that close to you?
The man south of us that once he signed and found out a few things later on, said he wished he had never signed, but there was nothing he could do to get out of his contract. He He's since passed away.
Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Gonigan? Marshall Thompson? Mark Wagner?
No.
Thomas Steffen? David Ackers? Jason Ward? Aaron Kenny? Julie Benlar? Brian Benlar? Tony Savino? Kim Schurtz? Any interested parties here whose names I've not given a chance but I have? Give me a hand. Okay, Mr. Lee?
Thank you, Judge. Mrs. Becker, just to make sure I understand your testimony. Did I hear you correctly that none of the proposed turbines would be closer than the existing turbines?
Correct. Then the closest three are four to us.
Okay, thank you. That's all I heard.
Thank you, Mr. Tom. Kendall Becker. If you want to raise your hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I receive. Please start with your name and your address.
Name is Kendall Geither, 1117-935, 2900 North Avenue, Walnut, Illinois.
And that's in Bureau, is that correct?
That's in Bureau County.
Take it from there.
I live just a mile from the Lee County line, south of Game Road. I farm in Bureau and Lee counties. The three closest proposed windmills are about 1.25 to 1.75 miles from my house. And from my field in Lee County to the closest turbine would be about 1/3 mile. That one would be in the flight pattern of a turning aerial applicator. To the north and northwest, many would be located about 4 to 5 miles away. A lot of people, when they're traveling or in different areas, they want to take pictures of picturesque valleys for scenic views, and some of them see a valley where they want to move into and live. On our horizon from the house there, we can see 25 to 40 miles to the north, northeast, swing around to the north, and continue on around to the northwest. We feel this gives us a wonderful view of the pretty Green River Valley that stretches out before us. That was part of the reason why we moved here 35 years ago and purchased a property about 30 years ago. We feel that a group of windmills like this view to the east of our house would definitely ruin our view of that valley. And this is part of the Big Sky project, and we're kind of on the west end of it. I want to tell my story and what I've experienced living on the west end of the Big Sky project, which extends from Bureau out into Lee counties. Prior testimony shows that problems of general noise, low frequency noise, vibration, and shadow pressure are repeatable and similar to my experience. I raise 480 acres of hay, and I make at least 6 cuttings a year. That puts me in each field 3 to 4 times for each crop when I'm cutting, raking, baling, and loading up the bales to haul them away. I use airplane to spray the crop for insects, since applying a spray at the right time is very critical to protect the production and the quality of the alfalfa. Ground spraying is not as efficient and cannot be done most of the time with varying field conditions, and also I don't want to be running down the crop and reducing yields. The time involved and the ability to be able to contact wind farm personnel can be a burden to let them know that the plane needs to be coming and flying, and have them notify any employees that are working out in the field. The safety of the pilot is also a concern when they're flying out there. The extra cost to get the spraying done in a wind farm and being reimbursed is a concern. So far, on a trial basis, the local pilot I use is still coming. Now, next spring, when I rotate my couple fields and seed a different one that's closer to some of the towers, we'll have to see if that will continue to happen, or if I'm going to have to use a ground spray when it's available. You have before you an exhibit talking about cover crops, some reprints from Farm Progress publication, and also another one from Illinois Agri-News talking about the importance of cover crops and how they can scavenge leftover or residual nutrients and hold them in the soil profile. That's starting to gain more and more interest, and will probably interest continue to where it's becoming more and more of a routine practice. So I do have a concern then that there's windmills in the area, but also getting cover crops seeded if and when the need arises. As far as noise interference, that is definitely a problem that has been haunting us for some time. During my years of farming, and some of you are farmers and will attest to that you practice and train yourself to listen to your equipment. And if there's a change of noise, either if a noise starts or a noise that you're supposed to hear quits, it grabs your attention automatically, subconsciously. Sometimes, if the noise that quits is supposed to be there, that means something's broke. So it grabs your attention. You have to stop, pause, figure out what's going on, and investigate it and or fix it. When we're operating equipment around other people, safety is always an issue. If we're running like a skid loader or one of the tractors there on the hay crew, a co-worker could shout at me to stop for a safety reason. Well, I may not understand exactly what he said, but just the idea that he shouted loud enough to get my attention means I've got to stop what I was doing, pause, and see what the trouble is. So in a wind farm, when the turbines are turning on and off, it's constantly grabbing our attention to see what changed around us. I have two neighbors where noise and the vibration of the noise has been a factor. Both of them can feel the vibrations inside their house. One has had to move out and is trying to sell his property to no avail yet. The other one is undecided as to what to do. He wants to rebuild another house, but is not sure that he can do that and still be able to live there. Shadow flicker is a big concern. Here we have a definition of vertigo, and everybody can read it, but like it's saying here, sometimes it's accompanied by nausea and vomiting. That's definitely my situation. I've been susceptible to motion sickness all my life. We have do the next one. Staying there too, I forgot about that we have a lack of stable visual reference point, which contributes to this effect, and that's a problem. If you've got shadow flicker that's moving all around you, I don't have a stable reference point that I can focus on. Next. again, motion sickness and a definition to that. Is there another slide on that? And showing what happens. And there again, a lot of this is very similar to my situation and my symptoms. I'll get a headache that'll transition into a migraine that'll last all day. My stability is affected to varying degrees. More severe cases require me to sit down or lean against something that's stable. I can start to feel queasy, which is a combination of a headache, upset stomach, and dizzy, and I'll eventually throw up. There's one windmill southwest of my house, 2,200 feet. It hits me with shadow flicker at sunset. As my wife stated, this started hitting us this year as early as November 14th. And last winter we had shadow flicker as late as February 4th. So I've got that to look forward to again this year, clear up until the beginning of February. On the east side of the house, there are 4 windmills from about 3/4 of a mile to 1 mile away. Each one takes its turn in the morning, producing shadow flicker in the bedroom as the sun moves north. This also hits us in the dining room too, and anything else on the east side of the house. We're not the only ones that experiences shadow flicker in our neighborhood. In our 1 mile road there, in that stretch, there's 4 other houses that are also affected by morning and evening shadow flicker from some of the same turbines. And a neighbor 2 miles away experiences shadow flicker in the morning in his bedroom for approximately 2 months as the sun reaches his northernmost point at sunrise, and that hits him on his bedroom between 5:30 and 6 o'clock in the morning for 2 months or more. The shadow flicker outside is also a huge concern. There's at least 6 windmills that cause shadow flicker on my fields where I work. 2 of the windmills are very close. The shadow flicker is more intense and can last longer. I've already had to move farm equipment to a different field that I'd opened up one evening because in the next morning there was severe shadow flicker and I could not work in that field to finish harvesting it. I had to move all the equipment to another farm and start another field. Got a video here if we find the right one. Okay, here we're going to have shadow flicker as we're driving down the road. You can see how it sweeps across the road and it covers your not only what's in front of you but also your peripheral vision. Here shows the shadow flicker out in the field and how that can affect you. We don't have any crops there right now, but that can be the same thing whether there's standing corn there or some alfalfa to harvest. Here again showing the shadow flicker out on the road and how it makes it extremely hard to focus on something and get through that shadow flicker without it causing me trouble. Here again showing how it sweeps across the road and it covers your peripheral vision and your forward focus. There again making it hard to focus on something so that it doesn't affect your driving. I usually have to slow down. Sometimes I'm glancing down at the dash of the vehicle if I can find a spot there without shadow flicker. Sometimes I've got to squint my eyes, but I feel all of this temporarily kind of affects my ability to be a safe driver if there would be oncoming traffic that I have to watch too, or if there maybe would be deer in the area that I have to watch. Working in my farmyard, especially climbing on something such as machinery, my stability is compromised if flicker is experienced more than a minute or two. During shadow flicker hours, if I have machinery breakdown, I've got to hire a man to do the welding since my welding is done outside my farmyard. I don't have a shop where I can drive stuff in. Here again, another one, the crops are harvested, but it shows how the shadow flicker out in the field can be rather intense at times. And even carries onto the road too. What I've experienced so far is, on a comparison basis, is working out in the field in the shadow flicker while driving farm equipment is very similar to being on a carnival ride. I've got to focus on the ground to drive and the rotary motion of that shadow flicker as well as the rotary motion of several windmills. If I catch the rotation in my peripheral vision of my eye, that affects me a lot. Again, I can feel the onset of a headache, which is usually a precursor to other symptoms and eventually getting sick. As my wife testified, working in the house, anywhere but at the desk, I've got to close my eyes and cover my eyes with my hand in order to eliminate the shadow flicker. Just closing my eyes alone does not stop it. And that means I've got to sit there for 10, 15, 20 minutes or whatever the time period is to get through that period before I can continue to do any of my work. Now we've had some decent pictures here and some videos, but I do want to stress that looking at a video of shadow flicker is not the same as being there because you don't have that hitting your full peripheral vision. And that makes a big difference on how it affects me. Moving on to noise. The noise inside the house from wind turbines sometimes is a real annoyance. It's bad enough in the living room, worse yet on the south enclosed porch, and that has storm windows, and it's oftentimes very loud in our bedroom. Several times I've done an experiment when I've gone upstairs, want to settle down for the evening, and I've heard the windmills upstairs in the bedroom. I've had to double the volume on the TV in order to drown out the noise from the windmill. Now that doesn't mean I've eliminated that sound or the frequencies that are a problem. I'm just trying to cover them up, and it adds more total noise volume to the room. And I believe that it's the consistent noise in that drowns out the intermittent swooshing noise of the blades going past the turbine tower. Okay, here we have some pictures showing the front of the house and a couple trees there in the front. Next. And you can see as we back off a little bit that the trees are taller than the house. There's two of them there close together. The branches, there you can see how they're taller than the house. The branches down low are about 5 feet off the ground. The branches are intertwined together, and when they're fully leaved out, it still does not stop the sound from coming through like a proposal. You stop that right there. Back up. proposed that trees or some sort of vegetation would stop that, but our experience with these trees, you can see, now this is looking out the bedroom window. We've got the two trees there. The branches are intertwined together. When they're fully leaved out, you can't see anything through there. And the wind tower that is out there is right about in that area right there. I know with the hazy ground, or hazy, it was hard to see it. That's where the tower is. And it's 1,400 feet straight south. So the trees didn't stop the noise. We can't open our windows in the spring, summer, or fall for fresh air. We have to run a window air conditioner to try and help keep some of the noise out. But and we tried it, but it's just a roaring noise with the windows open, and we just can't stand it. I talked to a local nursery about bringing in trees, because that's been a proposal. Small trees are not a problem to plant, but they take forever to grow, so it's not a quick fix. The nursery has moved 20 to 25 foot deciduous trees. They prefer not to move one this big, partly because all the roots are cut back severely and it shocks the tree quite a bit. The last one they did, they had to put 6 guy ropes tied to the tree to stabilize it. After 3 years, there were still 2 ropes on that tree to stabilize it so a strong wind would not tip it over. And the ropes must remain there until there's enough new root growth to support the tree. Also, they observed during these 3 years, the tree did not grow any in height. This company has also moved spruce trees 20 to 25 foot tall, and those trees had to be cabled for several years so the wind and snow load didn't tip them over. We found that for trees only 15 foot tall, a hole 7.5 foot wide, 5.5 foot deep must be dug to accommodate the root ball. So you're still getting a rather large root ball there, but because of the height of the tree and the wind and snow and everything, it takes a lot of effort to keep the trees alive, get them to do their job. The trees they're proposing to move are smaller than what I've got, and I don't have room for any more in our yard. So trees are not the answer. Not a real good picture, but what I'm doing here is trying to illustrate the flashing lights out the east dining room windows of our house. And that's what we get to see at night, is all those flashing lights constantly reflecting into the windows. That's the same view that we showed earlier of all the windmills to the east of the house. It's those same windmills. And those windmills are anywhere from 1,700 feet to 4.5 to 5 miles away. The lights on top of the turbines are another issue. They blink on and off all at the same time, and that's a real distraction. That blinking is compounded by the light reflecting off the backside of the turbine blades. It's bad enough when the blades are not rotating, but it's even much worse when the blades are turning and reflecting yet even more light. It's like you've got a great big fan going across there that's red in color and is very, very annoying and distracting. One morning when I was leaving early with a load of hay and there was some fog, it looked like one great big fireball on top of each tower. As that light was blinking, the blades were rotating and reflecting that light off. Another issue that I observed is compaction that's caused by the construction traffic, especially that biggest crane that they bring in to assemble the towers, the nacelle, and the blades. It is absolutely huge, and it makes for a huge problem. We've got some pictures here of that. Here you can see some of the ruts that was caused as they were driving across the field. Next. Oh, you got that on slideshow. Okay. Here again, some more ruts. We've got some pictures here coming up. Here's where, there again where they cross the road and the ruts that were incurred coming across. Here I'm showing a stick across the track, and that's measuring about 9 or 10 inches, I believe it was. This one here showing a deeper rut that was anywhere from 18 to 20 inches deep. That just shows one of the pads themselves on the track and how it even bit in deeper yet. Here we've got 18-inch deep rut where the track was going across the field. Another showing the same thing, just a little further back. A little further back view of the same picture. Another view of this track here was there again about 17.5 inches deep. Here's where they come up out of the waterway, and you can see the rut they caused as they pulled out into the field. There again, the track coming across that waterway was anywhere from 8 to 12 inches deep. The neighbor was able to chisel through that, or mostly over it, and to rake it shut, but he doesn't feel that he's ever did get it really tore up and loosened up. It's going to take a long time to do that. Here we have some more that were 12 inches deep. Here's where they come across the intersection east of my house. This field right here is the neighbors. It was a non-participating landowner and tenant. They were moving from that tower back there to the one that was behind me as I took that last picture. You can see the wood planks that are bolted together here to make a mat for coming across. Those are 12 inches deep, and all of that was on the neighbor's property without permission. There again, the track they left as they come across the corner of the field. As far as I know, the landlord or the tenant has yet to receive any of some debris that was left after they cleaned things up, some nails poking up. As far as I know, the neighbor of the tenant, the landlord or the tenant has yet to receive any compensation. They put the planks on the road to protect it, and since the road was a little lower than the field, they left the field uncovered, and that's why we have the tracks there in the field like we do. It shows the bigger crane taking the lead, coming across first. And even where they cross the road like that, it still dents the road. Showed one of the telehandlers of two that was there to handle all the planks, and the smaller crane coming across the road now. field, then onto the next turbine. There's what they left in their wake. Before they got down to this intersection across, they were up on top of the hill to the south. The crane operator wanted to drive across the road onto the non-participating landowner and make a loop around the hill that he had to come down and come across their ground. And he wanted to do all that without any permission. But at least the tenant was able to get there, get the landlord on the phone to make sure that he had not given them any permission, and they were able to stop that. Those deep ruts are going to take years to fix. As a comparison, where we had construction from a pipeline that went across, we didn't have that big heavy crane, but we had the crawlers that they used for laying the pipeline. And we're trying to show here where we had a nice tall corn off the side and good ears, but where the construction and the compaction was, we had short stalks and very small ears. And this is 8 to 10 years later, then we're still having this effect. So it takes more than just a few years to fix the problem of the compaction. Here you can see the area, the work area where they cross the road, and the area here where there was not the construction traffic, and you can see the transition right there. It tells you right to the line. Here we're showing an area where we had some crushed tile that showed up 8 years later. I think that started over. As they were crossing, we had somebody there from the tiling company constantly watching for any tile bits that might be dug up to mark tile. We did miss some. I'm not surprised at that. I have expected it. But we're trying to illustrate here that the crushed tile eventually showed up when we had enough extra rainfall and moisture moving, and it took time for that crushed tile to settle down and plug up, and then we lost some crop, and it was an inconvenience to have to farm around it, and time and effort to take and get it fixed. Okay, here, there again on the property, standing east of the house and looking east, that's the view we get to enjoy, and it's not an enjoyment by any means. And it would be a shame to have that same kind of view to the north with all the windmills that they're proposing to put out there in that Green River Valley. That's the one to the southwest of the house. Standing in the farmyard and looking to the northeast, that's the one that's the closest there, and it's 1,700 feet away. And it's just very intimidating when you look up and see something like that big, that close. A little bit of the same view showing the same one. And then if this is a video, I think it is, I'm going to sweep down and swing around to the south to show the south turbine then, standing from the same spot, then showing the one straight to the south. Any construction project, tile is definitely an issue. One question we had on pre-construction was about that crane, and the answer was, yes, it weighs 1.1 million pounds, but if you figure up the square inches of the track coverage, divide that out, there's less weight per square inch for the crane than there is for a loaded grain wagon. The problem is they're assuming that that weight on that crane is evenly distributed over the length of the track, and it is not. It's heavy on the back end, so that it does have the capability to pick something up that's heavy then. And if it was true that it was evenly distributed and was no more than a loaded grain wagon, I have yet to see a loaded grain wagon crush the road like these cranes have done wherever they cross the road, and they will leave a dent in it, whether it's asphalt, tar and chips, or concrete. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Questions of this witness, Mr. Burrow?
Do you have any other neighbors you've talked to that have the same problem with the motion sickness and that type of thing? Is there other people that have those problems?
A couple of them have suffered that a little bit on other circumstances, so they are subject to it a little bit. But I have not had anybody said that the windmill was going to cause any. But the one neighbor I did ask, like me, decided that it isn't worth the pain, so as soon as you feel any symptoms starting, you avoid the situation.
Well, you mentioned vibration with a neighbor. How are they feeling that the house is vibrating? Or
The one has got a home with metal siding, 8-inch walls full of insulation, 1.5 feet of insulation in the attic, and they can feel that vibration inside that house.
I think that's all.
Mr. Bothy?
Right.
Mr. Bassler?
Who are you currently using for an aerial applicator?
Craig Woodley at Walnut.
Have you contacted the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency on the sound issues?
We have not been in contact with them yet. We have worked with Bureau County zoning a little bit, and I've been gathering more information, but that contact is coming up this winter.
That's all the questions I have.
Mr. Pratt?
No question.
Mr. Forster?
No question.
Interested parties, about to have sheets. Richard Porter's not here, Dan Nolan's not here, Pat Scully, Robin Ackerson, Mr. Cavalich.
Yes.
Good evening, Kendall.
Good evening.
I'm going to refer back to the shadow flicker videos that you did. The ones that I'm most interested in are the ones with the driving on the road, if you remember those.
Yes.
Do you remember the very first time that you experienced shadow flicker while you were driving?
I do, because I thought, well, that's kind of interesting, because it's never in a complete circle. Because of the way the wind turbine can be turned, it sometimes flashes across slow, sometimes it's fast. As you saw, there was differences there in the video. So I thought, well, that's kind of an interesting way that the shadow moved across a road. And then as I got into it, I thought, it's also more interesting that it's bothering me.
And how did it bother you again?
There again, I was starting to get, I felt that motion, was distracting my eye like I would if I was on a carnival ride or some other ride where there's the wrong kind of motion. And I could kind of sense that happening and know that's a predecessor to other symptoms that develop.
Going back to the first time that you experienced this, do you remember if you were driving with the flow of the blades or against the flow of the blades? In other words, as the blades are traveling from, say, north to south, were you traveling north or south, or were you traveling against them?
I don't remember for certain. I think it was where we had a full rotary motion, where it was sweeping on both sides of the tower and hitting the road on kind of both sides of the tower shadow.
On that first time, would you say that it affected your ability to drive safely?
As I was being distracted by the shadow flicker, yes. I wasn't focused on the road.
As you become more experienced with driving on the roads with shadow flicker, how do you feel that your driving is affected?
I've learned to watch ahead of time for that shadow flicker. I practiced either trying to look above and beyond it, if that would work, or look right at the hood initially, and then try and look and jump and cross and look above it. So I've tried different things to see which works the best for me.
Would you say you're proficient at driving on the road now? Into the shadow flicker?
I'm getting better at it. I don't ever really want to say that I'm comfortable with it, because there again, it is a distraction.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bruce Forrest, Marie DeSummer, Stephen Rotary.
No question.
Bob Logan. Elizabeth Hartman.
No questions.
You can flip it now, Captain. Got him. Ed Curtis. Jim Geldon. Nancy Timble.
Good evening, Jim. Do you recall when Erin Johnson testified on the sound and shadow flicker that she said it did not impact driving down the road because it was like a line of trees along the road with the sun shining through? Do you agree with that?
I do remember her statement, and I disagree completely because it does affect me.
Okay. And that's all my questions.
Jim Timble?
Kendall, have you been able to measure or estimate your loss of farming productivity from all of these distractions, interruptions, shadow flicker, etc.?
I have not tried to measure that up to date. Hindsight is, I wished I would have started that, a log like that, to know what it has done for productivity, but I have not to date.
Just by the fact that you have to move equipment to a different field because shadow flicker prohibits you from doing it in the field that you planned, that alone would add to your hours worked, I would imagine.
The one day in particular, or the first time that happened, was a field right there north of buildings. We had got the end rows off, we were ready to go the next day. And next morning, that whole field was covered with shadow flicker, so we had to move 1.5 miles and start all over, move all the equipment, and open up another field, and we lost quite a bit of time.
Which would be a loss of quite a bit of productivity also.
Yes.
And also, assuming your answer would be the same, that you have not logged additional costs involved, but would you say that your cost to farm has increased because of the distractions, the negative impacts of the wind turbines on your work area?
It has somewhat, yes.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. Greg Dunnigan. Marshall Thompson. Mark Wagner.
Mr. Geithner, pardon me, but I didn't understand something. Are you a participating landowner in a wind project?
No, I'm not. I'm just trying to share my experience of someone.
Just answer that question.
Okay.
Are you farming property that turbines are on?
No.
Okay, but they're close, so they're close to your house, but you're not farming that property.
That's correct.
Okay. And who is the wind developer of the project that you're having problems with?
That's the Big Sky project.
Okay, the Big Sky project. And we're here tonight for the petition hearing for the Mainstream project. Have you been approached by Mainstream for any turbines on your property?
When they first moved into the area and were out soliciting land, I was approached, and I knew the answer was going to be absolutely not.
Okay. So you do have property that you could have turbines on?
Yes.
If you want to. And you've pointed out many things about turbines that you're having problems with. Now, would it be safe to say that you pointed out just even the visual? You don't like to see them. You moved out here, or you've lived here, you've enjoyed your view. Do you have a concern that one of the reasons you're here is because you don't want to see more turbines coming up in your view shed?
That's correct. As the pictures indicated, and a picture isn't quite the same as being there, but we do have a wonderful view of that Green River Valley. We can see clear up the lights of Dixon, the lights over at Sterling Rock Falls, the ridge of signal towers in between and kind of northwest of Dixon. So we get a nice view of that whole valley, and it would be a shame to have that spoiled by the view to the east, which shows that it's just full of turbines.
Okay. So even though Mainstream is not proposing any turbines on your property, you feel as if you've got a stake in this because your view shed will be affected?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware of the fact that Mainstream has an office in downtown Walnut?
Yes, I am.
Did you ever visit that office?
I stepped in there once, but I don't remember what the reason was at the moment.
Okay. Did you ever pick up any literature from that office, or were you ever given any literature from Mainstream?
I never picked anything up from the office. When they first come into the area, they sent out a general mailing to everybody, and I did receive one of those.
Okay, so are you aware of the fact that they do have, you are aware of the fact that they have print materials and electronic materials for landowners or the general public to hand out where you can read about their projects, their intentions in the area?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware of the fact that in their literature they point out that your participation in the project will help to reduce our dependence on foreign oil?
I have heard that or read it.
Okay. Are you aware of the fact that they say that your participation in their project will help to reduce global warming?
I think I've heard that.
Okay. Do you feel, I think you've made it pretty clear that you have numerous problems with wind turbines. Do you feel in any way that you should put up with these problems, let's say, so that you can say you did your job to reduce our dependence on foreign oil or to reduce global warming?
There are many ways that we can produce electricity. We have an overabundance of electric generation now in some areas of the country, shortage in other areas. Natural gas generating plant, a nuclear plant, they impact an area right around them, but that doesn't impact the huge area that a wind farm can cover, and a wind farm cannot generate the same amount of electricity that some other plants can.
Okay. Are you aware of the fact that in the mainstream literature they point out with pretty good amount of detail the amount of taxable income that local bodies will be receiving from their projects, the schools, fire department, etc. Have you ever seen that literature?
I've heard that they estimate there's a cash flow income to landowners and taxing bodies, yes.
So do you feel as if by not participating, you are in some way going to be hurting the schools or the fire department?
Objection, I think we're fine for opinion.
We're getting pretty close, but I'll let him answer this one.
In the short run, it may. In the long run, I don't believe so.
So it's not really a big concern on your mind.
No.
We start asking about
All right.
concerns.
Let me end
How he
this.
feels in his opinion is something for another stage.
The zoning board goes through a series of questions, let's say, called findings of fact. Are you aware of that? When they approve a petition, they need to go through the findings of fact?
I've heard of that process.
Okay, I believe that the fourth finding of fact asks the question whether or not the proposed petition will adversely affect the health, safety, and general welfare of the public. In the past, the zoning board has either unanimously or almost unanimously agreed that it would not adversely affect the health, safety, and general welfare of the public.
Mr. Wagner, you're starting to get us speech.
Okay, then I will end my comments.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Stefan? Mr. Ackerson? Jason Ward? Karen Kinney? Julie Van Laar? Brian Van Laar? Tony Savino? Jim Schertz. Interested parties whose names I've not called but would like to ask Mr. Gradner questions. Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Geiser, in regard to the shadow flicker on the roads, would we drive into shadow flicker if we thought it was unsafe to do so?
If it was a huge safety concern, no, I would not.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. You may step down. June Timble. I looked up and you were going. Now raise your right hand, please. Solemnly swear testimony, solemnly swear or affirm your testimony will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I do. Start with your name, please.
Jim Timble,
And your address, Mr. Freeman.
1479 Old Mill Road, Franklin Grove, Lee County.
Okay. Why don't you take it from there?
In the beginning of wind turbines, there was only one alleged nuisance complaint, and that was NIMBYism out in my backyard. Generally, zoning boards did not consider it a nuisance. And years into it, Dr. Nina Pierpont wrote a book called Wind Turbine Syndrome. And in that book, she talked about low-frequency silent illnesses, extreme headaches, vertigo, panic attacks, sleep deprivation, dizzy spells, tinnitus, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That was the beginning. Today, our core debate is the question, do wind turbines cause human health problems? The core debate has deepened and gotten more complex. And we've seen it in these hearings. Best illustration is every witness that has appeared, or one side or the other.
You're trying to give a closing argument. You
Okay.
don't sum up other people's
Okay.
testimony. This is your testimony.
Okay. I am testifying that the issue of the wind turbines cause human health problems has two sides, very contradictory. My purpose today is I will present categories of facts that support the argument that wind turbines do cause human health problems. And those categories will be local nuisance complaints, boards of health weighing in to protect citizens from adverse health effects of wind turbines, government entities weighing in to protect citizens from adverse health effects of wind turbines, medical caregivers weighing in to protect citizens from adverse effects of wind turbines. Wind developers are beginning to acknowledge that there are such effects. And finally, the growing press coverage of suffering from wind turbine syndrome. Local effects we've heard. And we've heard a lot of them, and we'll probably hear some more. I want to refer to just one, Mr. Wes Engelhardt. He testified.
Mr. Kimball, I'm not going to let you sum up other people's testimony.
Okay.
It's not-
Okay.
You can do that, but it's in your closing argument.
Yeah, no, let's go to boards of health weighing in to protect citizens from adverse effects of wind turbines. Falmouth, Massachusetts. Get this thing out of the way. Falmouth, Massachusetts is a city of 30,532 people last census. I am reading from Falmouth Board of Health Department letterhead. The city of Falmouth installed 2 wind turbines. Soon after they started running them, they were on the outskirts of the city. Hundreds of people complained of everything from noise to shadow flickering. The Falmouth Board of Health asked the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection to come in and measure the noise. The DEP found that the noise at night exceeded the 10 dB limit by 3 to 4 dB. As a result, the 2 turbines were shut down at night. The Board of Health made an additional request, and I quote, "We thank the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection and the Massachusetts Department of Health for preparing the panel report. However, there are a number of unanswered questions that the board feels warrant urgent consideration. We generally concur with the panel's conclusion that sleep disruption and annoyance may be the most important effects leading to indirect stress-related health issues. However, in the absence of credible scientific evidence indicating at what sound levels this may occur, the board has been reluctant to establish scientifically unsupported limits. Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection and the Massachusetts Department of Health should immediately initiate a study to address the influence of wind turbines.
These aren't facts. These are something some board is saying. But let's get to facts.
These aren't facts.
No.
I'm trying to give an illustration that cities are being affected.
But reading from letters doesn't.
Okay, all right. What this boils down to is that where it stands is that the boards of health of the state and the city of Falmouth recognize that they did not have standards for measuring low-frequency sound. And they both acknowledge that that seems to be the problem. The city now has wind turbines shut down at night, and they have a select committee that is going to decide whether to keep them going, relocate them, or find ways to engineer them so they don't make as much noise and fall within the standards. One of the victims of this is a lady by the name of Sue Holbert. She ran her business, her floral business, from her home. She had to close her business. She had to sleep in her basement, and she abandoned her home because of she could not stand it any longer. A acoustical company, Rand & Ambrose, was hired to measure the sound problems in this lady's home. Rand & Ambrose were in the business for decades. Ambrose is board certified by the Institute of Noise Control Engineering. Rand is a member of that institute. It's published in the Cape Cod Times. Two professional acousticians became debilitatingly ill when they attempted to do the study, and they had to flee the home. This is a tough pronunciation, but Scituate, Massachusetts, also in Massachusetts. The Scituate Mariner newspaper. Scituate Wind Group to look at turbine issues. As a means to address the issues of wind turbine, the Scituate Board of Health voted unanimously to form a steering committee. I won't read any more except that it's another case where the Board of Health stepped in. A steering committee is underway, and the objectives are the same as Falmouth. Stop the turbines or move them. Umatilla County, Oregon. The Zoning Board of Appeals at Umatilla County in 2010 established wind turbine setbacks of 2 miles. An example of a governmental body stepping in and putting in reasonable setbacks. profusion of lawsuits that are taking place across this nation and close by. Another indication that wind turbines are causing human health problems. We've had close by, we've had the DeKalb lawsuit, which was settled and sealed. So, ongoing is the Walnut Ridge lawsuit, which is prosecuted and pursued in Ottawa, Illinois. The basis of that lawsuit is wind farm is on hold because the basis of the lawsuit is the petition is not compliant. We had a huge lawsuit in Ogle County with the Baileyville wind farm years ago. That lawsuit was settled, or decided, but now the wind farm still hasn't gone up and a new lawsuit has been filed. Just recently, looking for the date here, October 30th, 2012, a huge New York lawsuit was filed. 60 neighbors of a $200 million wind farm sued the companies behind it, claiming noise and lights gave them migraines, made them nervous, kept them up at night. They say that the wind farm is 37 turbines, 476 foot tall, too large, too noisy, and too close to their homes. As reported in the Huron Daily Tribune, 16 Huron residents filed a lawsuit. That lawsuit is ongoing. It's here in Michigan. Medical providers. You heard, I believe it was Mr.
It doesn't matter what, you can't testify with somebody else.
Okay.
Okay.
You may have heard the name Dr. Michael Nissenbaum. He is a physician from Maine, state of Maine. He conducted the first controlled study of adverse health effects attributed to industrial wind turbines. 22 people living in the affected area of wind turbines were studied, living within 1,100 meters. And a control group of 27 people was used. The control group lived an average of 5,000 meters away, so 1,100 to 5,000. Of the 22 subjects, 18 of them, 82%, reported a new onset of worsened sleep disturbance. This is the Mars Hill Wind Turbine Project, since it went online. There were no new, there were 5 new prescription medications for chronic sleep disturbance. There were no new prescriptions for sleep disturbance in the control group. Of the 22 subjects, 9 of them, 41%, reported increased headaches since the Mars Hills Wind Turbine Project went online. The control group had 1 individual, 4%, with a worsened headache problem. 3 of the individuals reported newer worsened problems with dizziness. 3 reported a new problem with ear pulsation sensations. 1 reported periodic ear pain. ear pain. There were no auditory or vestibular complaints in the control group. 7 of the 22 subjects were troubled by shadow flicker, with 2 of them reporting nausea, 4 reporting dizziness, 1 reporting migraine headaches. There were no complaints related to shadow flicker in the control group. Many of those affected reported new or worsened psychiatric symptomatology, including feelings of stress. 13 people, 59% anger, 17 people, 77% anxiety, 7 people, 32% irritability, 6 people, hopelessness, 12 people, 55% depression. The control group reported no new or increased psychiatric complaints. Dr. Hazel Lynn, the Grey Bruce medical officer of health in Ontario, Canada, testified that municipal councils should have jurisdiction over setbacks because within buildings, low-frequency noise, which comes from wind turbines, could cause health effects such as inner ear problems. Dr. Alan Watts, that's New South Wales, Australia. The World Health Organization, the United Nations. Under their report, it lists occupational health risks and their control. Onshore wind energy technology. A variety of proximal nuisance effects are also raised with respect to wind energy development, the most prominent of which is noise. Noise from wind turbines can be a problem, especially for those living nearby. Possible impacts are both audible and subaudible infrasonic. Arlene Bronzoft. Dr. Bronzoft is the author of landmark researches on the effects of elevated train noise on children's classroom learning. She did the report and assisted in updating the New York City noise code. She has now written a paper entitled "The Noise from Wind Turbine: Potential Adverse Effect on Children's Well-Being." And she states, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency released a booklet in 1978 that contained a section entitled "Special Effects on Children," and cited her research on the impacts of noise on children's classroom learning. Then concludes that it would be egregious to fail to consider the impacts of new sources of noise, for example, industrial wind turbines, on their health. She believes that we should explore the potential harmful noise effects of industrial wind turbines before we take this energy source any further. Wind developers are advancing offers, policies, etc., that show more acceptance of the fact that there are problems. Cathinus Energy, that's a big company from New York that's building turbines out in Wyoming. They are offering $5,000 to anybody around one of their wind farms who will sign a waiver saying they will not complain about excessive noise from turning turbines. And we're all aware, most of us are, of mainstream wind from literature, brochures that said they could control shadow flicker and prevent it, to now having a good neighbor policy and offering money to people to tolerate shadow flicker. And finally, Mr. McCann, a property value expert, testifies in his writings that wind farms are
They've already heard Mr. McCann's testimony. I want to speed it up by not repeating what other people testified.
okay. I'm done. Here are
Questions of Mr. Timbo, Ms. Brill?
Jim, was there, in the studies you read, did any of the doctors or professionals have any setback based on sound levels or anything of those lines of data? In other words, they had taken sound levels at a quarter mile, half mile, and got below certain levels when you got so far out?
no. They basically did studies with patients, with people with complaints.
Okay. That's all I have.
Mr. Pratt?
No question.
Mr. Forster?
No question.
Mr. Pastor?
No question.
Mr. Bowden?
No question.
Using half sheets, Richard Porter's not here, Dan Millman's not here, Pat Scully, Robin Ackerson, Giles Cavalier.
Yes.
Evening, Jim.
Evening, John.
You testified a lot of physicians were saying that this, the noise caused from the wind turbines created a lot of medical maladies, a number of them, and you listed them. Is that correct?
Yes.
You also mentioned somewhere in your testimony, I'm not exactly sure where, it was near the end, that some of the people that were suffering from the noise, especially, wanted to accept some payments as retribution or as a mitigation.
No, I just talked about an offer from a wind company in Wyoming. They would pay somebody $5,000 to sign a waiver and not complain about the noise that they would be hearing.
Would that make the noise go away?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
Rich Porter? Marie DeSummer? Stephen Robert?
No question.
Logan? Elizabeth Hartman?
No questions?
Catherine Geiger?
No questions.
Ed Curtis?
No question.
Kendall Geiger?
No question.
Dean Gelden? Nancy, your chance now. Got spouse now here. I understand. Greg Gonigan?
No question.
Marsha Thompson? Mark Wagner?
No.
Thomas Stephan? Dave Eckerson? Jason Ward? Karen Kenny? Julie Van Laar? Brian Van Laar? Tony Savino? Kim Schertz. By a show of hands, anyone here that's an interested party that I've not called, given an opportunity to cross-examine Mr. Kimball? Mr. Lee?
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Timble, do you know how far away you live from the proposed project?
I object to your question.
Overruled.
Your Honor, may I at least explain the basis of my objection?
Sure.
Thank you, Your Honor. Both in Mr. Crowley's testimony and Ms. Johnston's testimony, questioners asked them, would they live in a wind turbine field? And Mr. Lee objected. And you honored his objection. Then they asked, would they...
They were being presented as experts. You were not. Objection to the rule. Just answer the question, please.
I don't know.
You know how far you live away from the, do you live near any wind turbine now?
No.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Mr. Chairman, I suggest continuing until Wednesday night, correct, the 12th?
And Wednesday night, then we will have some more of the same testimony.
I'm down to approximately 6 half-sheets of people who have not responded. I do know Mr. Logan and Mr. Boris were otherwise occupied tonight. I don't know about the others.
Okay, thank you. Yes, then the next scheduled hearing is Wednesday, this Wednesday evening, the 12th. And then the last one for the month is the 18th of December, Tuesday, the 18th. So this Wednesday and then next Tuesday. Do I have a motion to continue the hearing next, this coming Wednesday? Is there a second?